London is this amazing data ecosystem, and it's often very hard to stitch that cross-sector data together, but I think we should do more of it, and I think we should be able to discover it more easily across the boundaries.
Data is treated as the dirty little secret of AI. When it makes headlines, it's usually for a bad reason. I'm Jennifer Ding from Encord. I'm a data scientist, data steward, and even a data festival organizer. I'm into data, and I think we should talk about it more. That is what AI Data Chats is for. In today's AI Data Chat, we are here with Martine Wauben, Head of Data for London. Welcome, Martina. What is our AI data topic for today, and what are you pairing it with?
It's a very hot day in London, so I've just got some water with me, which goes to show resilient cities, right? We need to be prepared. But yeah, for me, the hot topic right now is devolution, cross-sector data, and data discovery, finding out what's out there, and so we can use it better.
I love it. This hot take for a hot heat wave day in London. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think what we've been learning is that government's made some announcements, local government is being challenged to make better use of their data, and the private sector is talking about their data as a proper asset and value to the business. But often the challenges we pick are still very one problem only. So when historically people think about delivering public services, they think about making better use of the public sector admin data. Or when the private sector is thinking about how they can derive more value, they think about, their marketing and reach and engagement. And I think what we ought to start doing more of is bringing those things together and stitching them together where we have joint problems to solve. That requires an awful lot of good information governance. It requires us thinking very carefully about what we use data for properly. But it also requires data discovery and just knowing what's out there. And London is this amazing data ecosystem. You know it well, you know the grassroots very well. And it's often very hard to stitch that cross-sector data together. But I think we should do more of it. And I think we should be able to discover it more easily across the boundaries.
In many ways, it feels in contrast to how AI data sets are being built today, which is with no curation or thought about what sector or domain it belongs to, but just amassing as much text as possible or amassing as much imagery as possible or videos or whatever modality. But especially when it comes to public sector data, there is this need to think very carefully about how to do data sharing in a safe, secure, beneficial way for everyone involved. What do you think are the biggest barriers to more data sharing, more open data sharing in London?
We've found in London there's been some amazing investment in information governance and building of trust through the London Office for Technology Innovation and the Information Governance Group for London. What we've invested in is the human plumbing, the human capital, and the trust in that system to be able to get these things done. Because actually what you need is mutual trust that we all have the same problem we're solving, and that is genuinely the purpose people want the data for. And that trust we have now built within London, and we're starting to unlock things way faster than we used to. So it would take years to get multiple boroughs to share data with each other, multiple local authorities, all pooling their data to kind of solve a bigger problem. That can now take weeks, maybe a month or two if it's a really tricky one, and we need to really be sure that it's right. Speed at which we're now able to do that means Londoners can see why it's worthwhile. Right. And that mutual trust back from the Londoners to the public sector is also really important because it gives you the license to do it again and again and prove that you're trustworthy over time, because it's not demanded trust, it's earned.
That makes a lot of sense. And it sounds amazing that you really have the years of work and the years of trust as a foundation that you can now build upon. Something you brought up was the potential to unlock. And I think unlock has been a big term this year in the UK, where there's been a lot of conversation about the potential around unlocking these high value government data sets. But at the same time, you point out there are some things that we must keep in mind. There's a lot of really valuable, but also very sensitive data within the public sector. When it comes to unlocking public sector data, what do you think we don't talk enough about?
There's been a lot more conversation about devolution recently, but people don't talk about it in the context of data. So I think what we often don't realize is how much value is in local government data. The things that we collect and the things that we know about residents is so rich and so valuable and so sensitive and needs to be protected correctly, but also gives you a real insight. The other tricky thing, and the thing that's really important to remember, is that local government doesn't choose its customers, right? We really cannot decide, these people are too difficult, we can't serve them. We're just going to design our services for everybody else. We can't do that. And so we have to make sure that when we make data-informed decisions, or when we build digital journeys, that there is always ways for people to engage, and making sure that we actually reach everyone, not just everyone who's easy.
Yes, thank you so much for raising these points around the value of local data, and especially in the context of local government, who is a part of the data story. I'd love to learn a little bit more about your role as the head of data for London. Could you tell us a little bit more about your vision for London's data community?
Yeah, so I head up this Data for London program, which was set up by the mayor to make it easier for people to use and share data in London to solve real city problems and serve Londoners. What that means is I spend my time learning from what's already out there, amazing projects people are doing in these specific areas. And I'm essentially doing three things. Firstly, I am supporting existing data users. I look after the London Data Store, which is a big open data portal that is also used to share data. We service the data community of London, and academics and students anywhere in the world, really. We get emails from everywhere. It's wonderful. So that's kind of the immediate service we're running. The second thing I do is encourage good data citizenship, which is why I care so much about trust. I care so much about standards and ethics and engagement. I think it's often easy to forget, when you've got a really worthy cause, when you've got a really important problem you want to solve, and you know that problem matters to people, that you have to remember to also speak to those people. And you have to make sure that they're on board. And all that work to encourage that across London is part of what I do. But then finally, really importantly, is we want to fix the plumbing. Just straight up, how does data move from A to B to solve real problems? That's a massive problem. I'm a statistician, a data scientist by background. So I know how the data lifecycle works. You start by finding the data you need, then you get yourself access, you do the governance steps, then you actually share it, you exchange it somehow, and only then do you get to the fun kind of wrangling, visualizing, etc. So we're fixing the plumbing in order. So we've started with helping make data discovery easier in London. Data discovery can be really tricky because London is such a multi-sector ecosystem, lots of people working on really worthy causes next to each other. And we don't know what we all have. We don't know who's who. And right now, the only way to find out is to run into them. And so what we want to unlock with the first piece of the Data for London platform is to share metadata the way we share open data. So even though you can't open every data set, you can't publish every data set, but for a lot of data sets, you could publish the metadata. So the description and the title and the license and kind of how you would go about getting access and making that searchable for London. And that's what the Data for London library is going to do for people. It will allow you to search all of London's data ecosystem and find the data that matches your problem, find the partners you need.
That is very exciting. There's so many possible data sets. I know that your team at the GLA does a lot of interesting work with high streets data sets for activity on our high streets. We, of course, have some interesting mobility data sets on Transport for London and micromobility, the shared bikes that are across London, where the public water fountains are. The possibilities are endless, right, when you think of data sets for a city. So I'm wondering, at the moment, what's on your wish list?
So for the library, my wish list is the NHS data. So the NHS has a published data catalogue, but it's not structured in an easy to consume way for us. But I think it would really help people to make it easy to kind of search that metadata to then direct to the NHS own access management process, right? So we're not providing direct access to anything. We're just allowing people to make better informed requests, because at the moment the NHS gets lots of requests from people saying, can I please have this and this thing? And it turns out that's really hard to give them because of the way the data is structured. So giving out that metadata in an easier to consume way would make for better requests, would make for better projects and quicker outcomes. So that's the metadata I'm really keen to onboard. And we're working with colleagues in NHS England to take that ready for consumption. The data that's on my wish list, I have two, if I'm allowed to be greedy. The really serious data sets I really want are around city resilience. So actually, we're currently in a heat wave. What buildings need to be retrofitted to make them resilient to climate change? And that is both in terms of heat insulation. So how do we reduce the energy costs when it's cold to keep them warm, or cool when it's hot? And a really important one is around flooding. Which accommodation is below ground or easily flooded? Because at the moment we really struggle to know that about the city. So those are the really serious ones where we are really open to alternative data sources, where we're investing in data sources of people collecting information. The less serious one, but actually when I started, people kept talking about this, is park opening times. Green spaces, really important to London. We really, really need lots of them, partially for climate resilience purposes, partially for wellbeing purposes. But actually, when a park opens and closes is currently not systematically collected. And lots of people want this and think they can monetize it by, for example, improving routing apps, right? If you can walk through a park instead of along a main road, that would make you more likely to use that routing app. And so we think that's one of those data sets that I would really like. I think there's real value in it, but it's slightly more on the city side. But I think it would be great to have.
I would be a big consumer of that data set. It reminds me of some of the other most popular data sets that I've heard of from other cities, like the toilet map. I think there's one in London, in New York City as well, right? Sometimes it just comes down to things like this. Where can I find the closest public toilet? And when can I visit my park? These are the questions that we really want our data sets to answer. So thank you so much for raising a really exciting wish list for the Data for London Data Library. So my next question is, there's been a lot of different metaphors that we use when we think about different types of data ecosystems. We have data stores, we have databases, we have data sandboxes, and now more and more we hear this term data library. I'm wondering what you think about the term library. Makes it the right sort of analogy or mental model for what the Data for London Data Library hopes to be?
Yeah, I think the advantage of the word library is that every Londoner knows what a library is, in a way that they might not know what an index is or a catalogue is. Even though, from what I've described, it might be clear to some of your listeners, what I'm designing by putting metadata together is essentially an index. We thought that the word index doesn't really come across to the people who need to understand the value of it. That said, there are cities elsewhere who have called it index. So I think it's the Amsterdam city region has called theirs their kind of platform index. I think the word library is a helpful one in this context because it implies an active level of stewardship. It means that we're making choices about what's in it and what's not in it. The advantage of the Data for London library over the existing data store is that we no longer need to keep a copy of the actual thing that people are finding. That's really good for data privacy, but it also means that the running costs are much lower. And it means that we no longer have to be as picky about what we're willing to take. So with the data store, we've taken about 1,200 open data sets. We maintain those, we look after those, but we've had to say no to people who we think are really relevant to the data ecosystem in London, which is unfortunate. And with the Data for London library, we're able to say yes to way more partners because what we're now essentially checking for is value to Londoners, the quality of the collection, quality of the metadata, all of which might still exclude some things, right? We do still need it to cover London. But if your data is about London or it covers London and it's good data, then we can now list it on the Data for London library when before we couldn't. And I think that is a kind of helpful picture for people who think of a library as something that doesn't necessarily imply endorsement of every book on the shelf. It is a way for us to help people find the thing they need without us necessarily rubber stamping it, while providing some level of curation through kind of quality checks or trustworthiness checks.
That makes sense. There's so many copies and copies of the same data set out there. It can be hard to know, which one to source from. And not only is this potentially wasteful, from an environmental standpoint, it can be confusing to know where to even look. I find myself sometimes using the analogy of map a bit more, like a data map, as a way to understand and situate how you as a user are relative to some of the data sets as well.
Because we want to be so inclusive, we have had to set the bar for metadata reasonably low because we think that actually it's more important that lots of people contribute than that we have the absolute full sort of Dublin Core metadata standard for everything that we have. We're working together with King's College London to see if we can retrofit structure onto the metadata, because basically when you start harvesting information from lots of places, no one seems to agree what qualifies as an environment data set. It's a very fuzzy concept. So can we retro analyze which data sets go together based on the metadata that we already have? And that project is run by a team, kind of a research lab, that also do a lot of work on data ontologies. And then you start to get into real knowledge and information management, thinking about how things go together. You get very close to things like recommender engines, essentially a map. It's a graph.
A few weeks back, we had Elenis and Burl on aidatachats to talk a little bit about Croissant and the vision for the metadata standard for data sets. So very lovely to hear that there's a collaboration with King's and this ongoing effort to align some of the cataloging of the library with other standards that might be used in London, but also beyond London. The other thing I'd love to bring up is that we are running a data festival soon together called London Data Week, which is all about public engagement with data, having more public conversations, hopefully contributing to building more public trust. And it's happening this July 7th through 13th all across London. So what are you excited for about this year?
I was so pleased to be part of it again this year. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year. I'm really excited because, of course, it's for us the launch of the Data for London Library. We will get to show it to people for the first time fully, which is very exciting. We're really interested to hear what the community has to say, and incorporate that into our future plans and where we go next. I'm also just really excited to go and listen to kind of Londoners' ideas about, for example, how do we measure a healthy river? How do we collect good data on biodiversity? How do we acknowledge local histories? And how do we map people's experiences somehow of residents in their areas? All of these things we also think about, but actually be great to get their own words and in their own kind of organizers thinking about it. There are things that I've never heard of before, and I'm going in blind, and that is a delight. For me, it's 2/3 work event, 1/3 L&D. For me and my team. I'm really interested in the algorithmic generation of music. I think that's going to be fascinating. I'm going to try and get a spot on the hands-on workshop. I'm really interested in some of the work that's happening for young people. I may not be able to go along myself because, of course, it's not for me, but I'd love to hear what young people think about social media, what young people think about sort of generative AI. So yeah, I feel like I'm not going to sleep that week. It's going to be amazing.
For sure. One of the exciting things about Data Week is similar to the values of the Data for London Data Library is that we run as a fringe. So anyone who's interested in hosting an event can propose to run an event for whatever community, whether it is people interested in an algo rave, as you mentioned, who are generating music through algorithms at King's College London, or the data workshop that Nesta is hosting for what does a healthy river look like, or finally the We and AI workshops that are happening over the weekend around chatbots and deepfakes and having conversations about these topics with young people. It's great to see the data community come together and really talk about what matters most to them. One thing I'm very excited about is the Flourish team, who's a part of Canva, are hosting a 3-day program where in addition to some workshops for designers or data professionals that they'll host at their office, they're also providing space for other community members to run their events as well. And finally, something really exciting is that we have some artists coming who have designed a data wagon, mobile data kiosk, and they will be cycling around London asking different data related questions to people and creating a dot map of data related topics that are important to Londoners. So lots of really exciting things to look forward to: raves, bikes, wagons, and much, much.
Great to have more active travel included as well, because that's obviously one of the really, really important things to us. And so all these walks, bikes, it's been really nice to see people kind of take to the streets, literally.
Well, final question for you to close out this portion of the chat. What do you think is the role of a citywide data festival to a city like London?
We really believe that it's a really important part of our calendar for us, and that's because of that data citizenship part of the Data for London programme. So London Data Week is, in a really practical way, an opportunity to hear from Londoners and see what they trust and don't trust, who they're willing to speak to, who they will feel heard by. It's a moment for us to do some active listening, right, and make sure that we are hearing when people speak. It is at the same time a moment for people working on data to dedicate some time to learn from each other. London's got an amazing grassroots community of practitioners of every discipline, right? From the AI engineers, PhDs in really technical fields and have found themselves an amazing job in one of our AI startups, all the way through to activists and ethicists thinking really deeply about the governance of these kinds of projects. And we have the full array here because London attracts the best and the brightest. And I think this is the moment where we do that kind of cross-functional community conversation where we are not specific about, here's the discipline you have to be from. Instead, you engage on the issues, the problems, the kind of outcome we're all trying to achieve for London and frankly for the country and the world, right? A lot of these things are not unique to us. So relationships that are built during Data Week keep going afterwards and build some really amazing things.
Something maybe worth mentioning too is that though London provides sort of the convening ground, we do have organizers from all over the country and also from other countries as well. We have online events organized by global contributors that you can find in our programs. Hopefully this will be a good opportunity to build towards the vision you laid in the beginning of the chat, where we can start to build cross-sector understanding, cross-sector data sharing, and importantly, better public understanding of data. Not just that, also an opportunity for the public to shape what the future of data means in London.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it.
Amazing. Well, with that, I think we're ready to move on to our final rapid fire round of questions.
Dear. Okay.
What scale of data are you working with these days?
These days, spend a lot of time working with anonymized aggregated data, but at quite small geographic granularities, kind of for every ward in London, that does add up, as well as admin data sets. So things that we're collecting in the course of normal business. We are really interested in the frontline impact. And so really what you're looking for is the last month worth of administrative data. And then we partner with others who do the kind of massive data set analysis. To go on the same parks theme, the green space data that we publish by Giggle is fantastic. All these sort of breakdowns of use of public realm and kind of which ones are private, which ones are public, which ones are open, etc. I think that is a wonderful data set.
What do you think is an AI data challenge that should be receiving more attention?
There's quite a lot of attention for it, but not really in the public imagination, which is around procurement. I think AI changes procurement in about 20,000 different ways, and some really smart people are thinking about it, all the way from how do you assure something that's got AI built into it, through to how do you specify what you want. Procurement's a big one in the public sector.
What do you think 2025 is the year of for AI data?
In the UK, certainly it's the year of devolution. I think it's the year of trying to put decisions and data as close to the impact as you possibly can. I think the data lake is slightly falling out of favor for us, and instead we're trying to create either federated or localized real problem solving partnerships. Yeah, so it's devolution both politically and technically.
I love it. From the data lake to the data canal. Well, final question to close out today's chat. How is your pairing of your drink with today's AI data topic?
I feel like I'm known for getting quite excited about data. And so I've finished half of my water bottle over the course of this conversation.
I'm glad you're staying hydrated. And thank you for joining us, Martina. Where can we find more about your work?
Thanks for having me. We will be launching the Data for London Library. That will just be Googleable, which will be great. We're on Blue Sky and LinkedIn under City Intelligence and the GLA, so keep an eye out there as well.